Well, the Democrats have finally begun the process of choosing a candidate to challenge President Trump in November. The first stage, the Iowa caucuses, has been a fiasco, with results delayed more than 24 hours. With about 71% now of the vote in Iowa declared, the youngest candidate, 34-year-old Pete Buttigieg, is leading, closely followed by the left-winger Bernie Sanders. Mr Buttigieg is the first self-identified gay candidate to try and win the presidency. He described the results as an astonishing victory.
We don't know all of the numbers, but we know this much. A campaign that started a year ago with 4 staff members, no name recognition, no money, just a big idea. A campaign that some said should have no business even making this attempt, has taken its place at the front of this race to replace the current president with a better vision for the future.
Well, the former US Vice President Joe Biden was considered by many to be the front runner. He is trailing in 4th place. Speaking in New Hampshire, he joked about the delay in results from Iowa.
You know, 24 hours later, they're still trying to figure out what the heck happened in Iowa. At this rate, New Hampshire might get the first vote after all.
So it was a big night for the Democrats and for Republicans. Let's take you to Washington and join our correspondent there, Ben Wright. Ben, first to President Trump's speech. It often foreshadows what's going to be the themes for the year in terms of his campaign to retain the presidency. If so, he's betting on the economy.
Yeah, he certainly is. I mean, there is a buoyancy in the American economy. People are feeling, I think, flusher than they have for quite a while. The unemployment rate is at a 50-year low, not at an all-time low, as I think President Trump claimed in his speech. But there is definitely an optimism around the US economy that he absolutely intends to try and capitalize on and ride into the White House for a second term. It was also interesting, I thought, in his speech that there were messages targeted at African Americans, Hispanics. I think he's trying in a way to broaden his base a little, and he needs to if he's going to guarantee getting another term. He can't just rely on the base that he had back in 2016. I mean, his approval ratings have never got beyond about 50%. I think he needs to broaden that coalition in the next 9 months to be confident of being re-elected in November. But it was a very confident and typically bombastic Donald Trump performance. It did feel more like a political rally than a State of the Union address. And it was surreal because sitting there in front of him were, ranks of Democrats, including the House managers who've been trying to turf him out of office in the case they're prosecuting in the Senate, a case that wraps up in the next few hours with what everybody assumes will be Donald Trump being acquitted. So it was very strange in terms of the timing. The tone was startlingly toxic, even for Washington.
Yeah, what is being made of those notable breaches of decorum, Ben?
Well, we'll see as Washington wakes up. I think Nancy Pelosi's actions aggravated and angered a lot of Republicans. I think many Democrats are furious at the contempt that they would say President Trump showed to Nancy Pelosi at the beginning, where he didn't shake her hand. I mean, the two have not had a very good relationship for a long time. And I think those two bits of theatre just emphasize how polarized and bitter and divided American politics is. And, you see it in Capitol Hill. You see it far beyond Washington as well.
So briefly, Ben, to who will take on President Trump in November, is there some surprise that Pete Buttigieg did so well in Iowa?
I think there is, and there is certainly some momentum with him now. I mean, it was very the polls were saying all sorts of contradictory things on the eve of this caucus, and of course it was in the end chaotic, and we don't fully know how the eventual results will tabulate and shake down. But Pete Buttigieg clearly did well. Bernie Sanders did relatively well. We can say that Joe Biden did badly, and I think he now has got some real ground to make up through New Hampshire. South Carolina is his big bet, where there is a big African-American Democratic vote down there. He needs to make some ground up now if he's not going to fall by the wayside fairly on in this contest. But it's so early to say who's going to emerge as the front runner. But Pete Buttigieg clearly, I think, has had a very good couple of days.
Ben, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us from Washington.